Hey, what's up? Welcome to part 2 in my 3-part series of bass drum anchors. Now, if you missed my last video, you might want to just take a quick second and go watch part 1, which I'll link above, as it's the first in a 3-part series of bass drum anchor shootouts. In the first one, we talked about hard surface bass drum anchors. In this one, we're going to be talking about carpeted solutions. In the third one, we're going to talk about, your DIY remedies for a creeping bass drum. But in part 1, I also go through my scoring methodology and also do some unboxing of all the bass drum anchors that we're going to be talking about. So again, if you want to go check it out, feel free to. If not, I'm glad to have you here because I'm going to be putting each of these anchor solutions through their paces, and at the very end of the video, I'll be going through my scoring of each anchor so that you can know basically what, in my opinion, is the best anchor on the market today. All the products I'm talking about today are going to be linked in the description down below, so if you find one that you really like, that you think will fit your situation best, would really appreciate you picking that up via one of the links below, as it does help support my channel. Also, if you're enjoying yourself and you like my content here, go ahead and like the video, subscribe with notifications on, because I do release content regularly and you won't want to miss out. I briefly discussed my scoring methodology in the last video. However, I am going to be rating each anchor on a series of criteria. The first one being performance, so how well it just performs on its surface. Also be going through its simplicity. Is it a simple product? Some are surprisingly complex, which is unfortunate. Durability and permanence are another couple of criteria. How long it lasts, and also is it easy to remove from the bass drum, or does it just kind of stay there? Aesthetics and packaging are another 2 categories. Setup, teardown, and packing, so how easy it is to set up and tear down and pack into cases. And lastly, overall functionality and versatility. So without further delay, let's get into the carpet shootout of these bass drum anchors. Okay, so just like in the last video where we covered hard surface kick drum anchors, in this video I did want to get a baseline. So if you remember from the last one, on a hard surface, a bass drum just moves like crazy. I mean, it just goes for a road trip. So I decided, in the carpeted video, I would do the exact same thing, where we test a bass drum with the spikes engaged instead of the rubber feet. So with the spikes engaged onto the carpet, and just to see what it would do. And so this time it did make it 5 minutes without any kind of anchoring solution, which is great. I think that, that's pretty standard for a bass drum. Bass drums tend to stay put on carpet. However, I had a very similar playing experience here as I did with the KBrakes in the hard surface video, because I just felt like the bass drum wasn't as stable as it could be. There was a lot of play, a lot of movement, which is fine. However, it just didn't feel like, it didn't feel very solid to me. There's all kinds of comfort that goes along with having a very solid feeling bass drum. But again, the spikes did their job, and the bass drum stayed in place. All right, so this is the part of the review video where I need to issue a slight apology, and that is to Will and Jay at KickBlock, because you were so nice enough to send me a product, and unfortunately, I fell victim to some video corruption issues where some of my footage just disappeared on me. Idiot! Luckily, I do have one of the 2 camera angles that was used for the test. However, I lost the other one, so apologies. But I still want to go through KickBlock because I think it's a really cool product. So the kick block. So in the bass drum spike only test, I guess you could call it, the bass drum didn't feel super solid here. And in order to demonstrate the kick block, I used the same demonstration method that Will and Jay used at NAMM here recently. That got a lot of great reviews, where I just put the bass drum spikes up in a horizontal position, and I let the kick block do all the talking. The installation of the kick block is brilliant. You pop it down, make sure the Velcro engages with the carpet, and you set the bass drum up against it, and it does everything else. Now, by virtue of the bass drum sitting on the ground and having the kick block there, it felt super solid. It was a nice, comfortable, playable bass drum that that felt there was confidence in the playing that came as part of using the kick block. So I really dig it. Made it 5 minutes. Bass drum didn't move an inch. Also, it's just simple. You pop it in, you pop it out. So, uninstalling and installing are equally easy. To uninstall it, you just take it off and you put it in a pocket somewhere. So beautiful. Nice design, guys. Okay, so it's time to talk about KBrakes again. You'll remember from my first video on hardwood or hard surface brakes that the KBrakes definitely kept the drum engaged, but there was a lot of play in the drum itself. Now you see here, I'm removing the grips add-on product for the KBrakes, and it's kind of tough to do. So getting them off, you might even want some tools to save your fingernails or something. But it's tough to do. Installation is the same. You pop it onto the spur, tighten the wing nut, and then you can lower the spur to a position of your liking. Once again, I'm repeating myself if you saw my previous video, but I do find the installation of this particular product to be a little bit tedious. So if that's an important thing for you, just keep that in mind. Okay, so playing was a different experience with KBrakes on a carpeted surface versus the hard surface, and I think the reason for that is the adhesion with their grips product attached to the bottom of the KBrake made for just no play at all in the bass drum on the front end on the spikes. And so, by virtue of it being attached to the carpet instead of a hardwood and really adhering to the hard surface, made the drum feel less wobbly. Though I still had some of that kind of unsteady phenomena, but it definitely performed a lot better on carpet than it did on hard surfaces. As you can expect with this type of thing, and especially on the surface, it did make it the entire 5 minutes. Uninstallation is basically the reverse process of installing, but again, if you need to change between hard and carpeted surfaces, it's just kind of a pain. So if setup and teardown is a big thing for you, and you're constantly switching surfaces that you're playing on, this may not be the best spike for you. If, however, you are on a surface that it's the same surface over and over again, this is going to be a good solution. Okay, last two products we're going to talk about. Again, you saw this in my last video. This is the Gibraltar anchor, the classic Gibraltar anchor that can be used on both hard surfaces and carpeted surfaces because of this reversible spike here, which is easy to attach and detach. So for this particular test, I decided to leave the spurs up as well to match the test to the other solutions in this particular category. The anchor did its job with the carpeted surfaces. It felt relatively stable, though with the spurs up, which is something you probably wouldn't do in a real scenario. With the spurs up, it was a little bit wobbly left to right. So take it or leave it. However, the Gibraltar anchor did do its job very, very well. One item of note is that the clamp that attaches to the hoop of the bass drum does leave some marks. There are some rubber grommets, I guess, on the clamps themselves, but it does leave behind a little bit of a rash on the hoop of the bass drum itself. So just keep that in mind before you go clamping it down super tight. In fact, you may want to add, I don't know, a little bit of extra padding there if you are super concerned about your bass drum hoops. And last up from Gibraltar, again, I want to thank Gibraltar for sending a couple of these products out. But the last item up in the test is the Stand Firm. These are essentially Velcro pads that you attach to your bass drum spurs. The hole there shows you where the actual spur, the spike of the spur goes into. The Velcro attaches behind the spur onto the carpet, and then there's a bit of a Velcro strap that you can just make sure it's secure around the spur itself. Installation is very simple. It's not very intrusive. It packs up easily. You don't have to remove any hardware from the spur. So I think overall it's a very good solution. As I start playing here, you can see that the bass drum is not moving. It's doing a nice job of keeping it in place. Again, in the initial test, the bass drum did not move with just the spurs themselves. And so in general, carpeted surfaces do quite well for bass drum creep. However, especially if you're a heavy hitter, just having that extra insurance is a really good thing, and so this product does well. I think the KickBlock also does a really good job of just that extra added insurance of not having a bass drum creep on you in the middle of a set. Okay, so it's time again to go through the scoring for all of the bass drum anchors specifically made for carpeted scenarios. I want to take you through my scoring of these individual products. Again, some of these companies did send me products, so I really appreciate that, but these were not paid advertisements, and so I really tried to approach this as unbiased as possible. We'll start kind of at the bottom and go to the top. I think at the very bottom, just overall, the Gibraltar anchor, just that classic anchor, it just did not sit well with me at all, because there was a little bit of scoring on the bass drum hoop. While it technically did its job and kept the drum in place, even with the spikes up, the drum was a bit wobbly, and I can't imagine really taking that thing around with me and putting it on and putting it off. And so, as you can see from the scores, the overall performance on carpet was good. Simplicity, a really low score because it is not necessarily a simple product. Durability, it's okay. I mean, I can see it, wearing over time, especially some of the rubber aspects. But okay. Non-permanence, so got relatively high scores here, mainly because it's relatively easy to take on and off, though there's a lot of fiddling involved here. The aesthetics, if it's not as clean as I would like, so some people do like the look of the aesthetics of that particular anchor on their bass drum, so there's that, but it's just not really my cup of tea. Packaging, just bad. Just the shrink wrap, getting that thing off was horrible. And also, it's just a black piece of board with some shrink wrap on it. There was no kind of literature or anything like that associated with it. And that seems trivial, but I think it does speak volumes to a product. Setup, tear down, packing. It is what it is. It is easily packable. It's small. It's relatively lightweight. Not necessarily, you could keep the bracket on the hoop in perpetuity, so it's not bad there. And functionality, versatility, that it is quite a versatile product, so you can do a couple things with it, including playing on hard surfaces, although didn't really perform well there either. And so overall, the Gibraltar Anchor got a I think a 59% score on my scoring system. Next up were the KBrakes. Great performance on carpet for sure. The simplicity of the product is probably one of its Achilles heels because it is complex. It's just, there's a lot to it and a lot that's involved with getting it set up and running and whatnot. Durability, it seems fairly solid. Again, the only little bit I was concerned about was that wing nut assembly, but again, it's nice molded plastic, and I think it would last quite a while. Non-permanence, I gave this one a little bit lower marks because in general you don't want something that's going to be necessarily permanent because you might need to swap something out real quick, and so this is a little bit harder to swap out, so I gave it some lower ranks there. Aesthetics don't really bother me. It's relatively non-obtrusive, and once they're on, they look real good. Packaging is decent. Setup teardown is its Achilles heel for sure. Especially if you're switching environments all the time. Not something I would recommend, although it is a relatively versatile product. So, it got some higher marks there. But that's your KBrakes for you. Next up, coming in at 84%, were the Gibraltar stand firms. Performed really well. Quite simple to use. Durability, I can see it wearing over time, but not horrible in terms of durability. Non-permanence, super easy to take on and remove, so I gave it a 10 there. The aesthetics don't bother me too much there. Packaging, super simple. Setup, teardown, and packing it, not a problem there. Functionality and versatility, not a super versatile product. It's designed for what it's designed to do, but only on carpet. So there you go. Coming in at number one for the carpeted shootout is going to be your KickBlock. The KickBlock, from everything that I've seen and having used it, having played it quite a bit, is just an awesome product. It performed well. It's so simple. You put it on, you take it off, throw it in a pocket, you're all good. Durability, it's made to last. The Velcro on it is solid. Aesthetics, I think it looks good. It's not obtrusive. It's not obnoxious by any means. Comes in different colors. Packaging is simple. Setup and teardown is really, really simple. It's not a supremely versatile product. In other words, you can't really use it on hard surfaces, but that's not what it's designed for. So KickBlock is the winner here in the carpeted shootout at a 91%. So thanks to Jay and Will for sending me that sample. If you'd like to pick one of these up, links down in the description below. I think it's well worth it for any gigging drummer. So that's it for the carpeted bass drum anchor shootout. So this is part 2 in our 3-part series of bass drum anchors. The first one was hard surfaces. This one is carpeted. In the next video, we'll be talking about some DIY solutions. So make sure you subscribe with notifications on so that when that video gets released, you'll be notified right away. Would love for you to hit the like button, as it does help support small channel like me to continue pumping out content and do great things. Really appreciate you joining me today, and hope to see you again here in the near future.